Let me say it straight, silence is not weakness, it's power. And when a man learns how to use silence strategically, it becomes his most dangerous weapon. But here's the twist most men don't realize. Your silence is hurting her more than your words ever could. You've been told that the only way to fix things is to explain yourself, to talk it out, to communicate like an adult. But in the world of male-female dynamics, talking too much is exactly why so many men get disrespected. Why? Because you're making yourself emotionally available while she's testing to see if you'll break. Most men think silence equals failure. They fear being misunderstood, fear losing her, fear appearing cold. So they chase, they explain, they plead. But here's what you don't know. When you go silent, really silent, it drives her crazy. Not because she thinks you're weak, but because she starts wondering, is he over me? Did he finally move on? Why isn't he reacting? That's when the tables turn. That's when you stop playing her game, and she starts playing yours. Silence forces her to feel your absence. And if you've ever meant something to her, she'll feel it deeply. This isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. It's about knowing when to shut up, not to punish her, but to protect your power. If you're ready to stop being the over-explainer, the fixer, the emotional sponge, then keep watching, because this silence, it's going to speak louder than anything you've ever said. 1. Silence triggers her insecurity. Here's something most men never get taught. Your silence is louder than any argument. When you stop texting, calling, or explaining yourself, she doesn't feel peace. She feels panic. Why? Because silence creates space. And in that space, her mind starts doing the talking. Did I push him too far? Is he losing interest? Is he talking to someone else? Women are emotional processors. They connect dots that may not even exist, and they do it fast. So when you go quiet, she doesn't assume you're calm. She assumes something's wrong, and worse, that you're pulling away. Here's the harsh truth. Women fear emotional disconnection more than men fear rejection. So when you give her nothing to react to, she gets uncomfortable. Not because you're being cruel, but because she's used to attention, reassurance, and reaction. But most men mess this up by talking too soon. They break silence to clear the air. Wrong move. Because the moment you explain yourself, you take the pressure off her and put it all back on you. Your silence forces her to sit with herself, to reflect, to wonder. That's when her own insecurities start to rise, and that's where you regain your power. 1. Let's say she starts getting distant. Shorter replies, less affection. Most guys panic and ask, did I do something wrong? Are you okay? Talk to me. Instead, you pull back. You stop reaching out. You match her energy, or less. Within a few days, she's the one texting more. Hey, are you okay? What's going on with us? Boom. That's the power of silence. It makes her feel what she was trying to make you feel. And now, she's the one chasing. 2. Women respect emotional restraint. Here's what no one tells men. Emotional control is more attractive than emotional expression. We live in a world that constantly tells men to open up, be vulnerable, show your feelings. Sounds nice in theory, but in reality, the more emotionally available you are, the less she's drawn to you. Not because women are evil, not because they don't care, but because feminine energy is attracted to strength, not softness. And when you're always reacting, venting, or expressing how hurt you are, she sees it as emotional chaos. She doesn't feel safe with that. She feels burdened by it. Now here's where it gets controversial. She wants you to feel, but not to fall apart. She wants you to care, but still be composed. She wants to know you're not a robot. But if you act like her, she loses respect. This is why silence hits different. When you don't react emotionally to her mood swings, disrespect, or games, you send a message. I'm not controlled by you. That's powerful. That's masculine. And deep down, she respects the hell out of it. Most guys think silence will make her feel ignored. But in reality, it makes her see you as strong, disciplined, and in control. 2. You're having a heated argument. She says something wild, maybe even insulting. The average guy, he snaps back. He defends himself. He gets emotional. You say nothing. You walk away. She'll think about that moment for hours. She expected a fight, but your restraint made her question everything. Now she's the one reflecting. Now she's wondering if she crossed the line. And just like that, your silence earns her respect. 3. Talking too much makes you look weak. Let's be real, most men talk too damn much. Not because they're chatty by nature, but because they're trying to be understood. They think if they just explain how they feel, if they just say the right thing, she'll finally get it. She'll finally respect them. She'll finally change. But that's not how it works. When you talk too much, especially in emotionally charged situations, you come across as needy, insecure, and worst of all, desperate for her approval. And that's exactly when she loses attraction. Not because you're wrong, not because your points aren't valid, but because you're doing too much to be heard when you should be showing her you're unbothered. You ever notice how the guys women chase the hardest are the ones who say the least? It's not magic, it's control. Those men don't beg for understanding. They don't try to talk their way into connection. They sit in silence and let the other person feel their presence or absence. See, when you talk too much, you kill mystery. You expose every emotional card, and instead of making her feel closer to you, you give her the power to predict and control you. Let that sink in. Silence, on the other hand, builds tension. It makes her curious. It makes her rethink her actions. But when you over-explain, you remove that tension. And now she's bored, unimpressed, maybe even annoyed. Look, you're not her therapist. You don't owe her a full breakdown of your emotions every time things get rough. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all, because the man who needs to prove his point constantly is already losing ground. 4. Silence creates mystery and value. Men, let's be honest, most of you are too available, too predictable, too easy to figure out. And that's exactly why you're not being taken seriously. You think that by constantly texting, calling, updating, and being transparent, you're building trust. But here's the truth most won't tell you. When a woman can read you like a book, she puts that book down. There's no challenge, no curiosity, no spark. You've given her everything up front. So now, there's nothing left to discover. That's where silence comes in. Silence builds mystery. It forces her to guess, to wonder, to imagine what's going on in your head. And like it or not, imagination is what fuels desire. Now here's the part that'll sting. Most men kill their own value by oversharing. They post everything, say everything, react to everything, always online, always emotionally exposed, always ready to respond. And what does that do? It lowers your stock, because anything that's too easy to access loses its worth. You want her to see you as valuable? Then start acting like you have value. That means knowing when to fall back, knowing when to leave space, knowing when to say less, so your presence hits more. You're not supposed to be a 24/7 hotline for her feelings. You're not supposed to be available every time she snaps her fingers. That's not strength, that's submission disguised as love. So here's your wake-up call. Stop giving her everything just to feel needed. Start holding something back. Start letting your silence do the work. Because when a man isn't easy to read, he becomes unforgettable. 5. She notices when you don't chase. You think she doesn't notice when you go quiet? When you stop checking in, stop liking her posts, stop replying instantly? She notices. She notices everything. See, women are highly sensitive to shifts in energy, especially when it comes from a man they're used to having wrapped around their finger. Most guys are trained to chase, to prove they care, to keep her attention at all costs. And for a while, she expects it, because that's what every other guy does. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop showing up the way she's used to, she starts to feel it in her gut. And now, the power dynamic flips. Here's the cold truth. Chasing kills attraction. It says, you're above me, you decide, I'll wait. But silence? Silence says, I'm not desperate. I have options. You're not the center of my world. And that unsettles her. Not because she doesn't like you, but because she's no longer in control of how you feel. Now she's the one thinking, why isn't he chasing me? Did I go too far? Is he moving on? That emotional gap, that sudden stop in attention, forces her to reflect. Most men don't give her that space. They crowd it, they suffocate it. And in doing so, they destroy their own value. You need to understand, Pulling back is not weakness. It's discipline. It's power. And when done right, it speaks louder than any text, any gift, any apology. Let her notice your silence. Let her feel your absence. Because when a man stops chasing, that's when she starts paying attention. 6. Pulling back forces her to reflect. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. Men are always trying to fix things too fast. She pulls away, gets moody, gives you attitude, and your instinct is to chase, fix, reassure. But what if the problem isn't you needing to say more? What if the problem is you never give her time to reflect? When you're always available, always explaining, always trying to keep the peace, she never has to sit with herself. She never has to question her tone, her behavior, her actions, because you're always there, ready to absorb the damage. But silence? Silence forces her into that uncomfortable mirror. It makes her ask, was I too harsh? Did I go too far? Why hasn't he called? And guess what? That reflection, that's where growth happens. You can't teach someone how to treat you by constantly reacting. You teach them by removing access, by pulling your energy back, by refusing to reward bad behavior with more attention. Let her deal with the consequences of pushing you away. Let her feel what life is like when your emotional support is no longer guaranteed. It's not about punishment. It's about self-worth. Men who always try to talk it out immediately don't realize they're doing her emotional work for her. They're interrupting the one thing that could actually change the dynamic: silence and space. When you stop showing up instantly, when you give her time to sit in the silence, that's when her ego quiets down and her emotions finally speak up. Let her reflect. Because when she realizes your silence isn't a game, it's a boundary, that's when everything shifts. 7. Silence ends the power struggle. Let's call it what it is. Modern relationships are a power game, especially in the early stages. Who's chasing more? Who's more emotionally invested? Who's going to fold first? And guess what? The man who talks too much, reacts too fast, or begs for clarity loses every time. Silence ends all that nonsense. It's the ultimate equalizer, because once you stop arguing, over-explaining, or competing for emotional control, you remove yourself from the game entirely. Now, she's left trying to figure it out on her own. No more back and forth, no more ego battles, just silence. And that silence, it forces the reset. The power struggle only exists when two people are tugging on the same rope. Let go of the rope. Let her feel the tension drop. Men who can sit in silence, who don't need to win every argument, who don't need constant validation, these men become untouchable. Why? Because they've mastered themselves. You want peace? You want to stop the emotional roller coaster? Don't react. Don't explain. Don't engage. Go quiet. Let the silence speak. That's when the power struggle dies and real clarity begins. Conclusion, let me leave you with the truth most people won't admit. Sometimes silence isn't just powerful, it's punishment. And not the petty kind. It's the kind that makes people realize how replaceable their drama is and how irreplaceable your peace was. We're in a culture that rewards emotional chaos and demonizes calm, collected masculinity. You pull back, you're toxic. You set boundaries, you're cold. You go silent, now you're the bad guy. But here's the uncomfortable reality. A man who masters silence masters control, not just over others, but over himself. And in a world that wants you loud, reactive, and always explaining yourself, silence is rebellion. Fellas, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Have you ever used silence and seen it flip the script? Are you struggling with it right now? I read every comment. And yes, I will reach out to some of you directly. This isn't just a channel, it's a connection. So speak your truth. Or better yet, let your silence do it for you.